Back to Waverley Park, our Hall of Fame segment. Hall of Famer and a great favourite at 7 Sport, Bob Davis. Thanks for coming out, Bob, because you've had a busy day.
It is a long way, Bruce. It is a long way. I was here yesterday.
You were.
Yes.
It would have been the MCG had the game not been transferred.
But
no,
that's all right.
What does the Hall of Fame mean to you, Bob? Because you're a part of it this year.
It is fantastic, Bruce. I'm very thrilled to have been included in the Hall of Fame. It's it set seals on a very good career that I've forged for myself, I suppose.
Well, you had a wonderful career at Geelong with best and fairest, two great premierships in 51-52, two of the great sides, and then, of course, as the last coach in 1963. And that's one of the reasons, Bobby, that you're here today, because we do have a living legend with us today who's with Drew Morfitt in Perth. Drew, great to see you. And Graham Farmer, Polly Farmer, who, Bobby, you and Polly will always be remembered together. You're the man that brought Polly across from Western Australia to Victoria.
Well, there's no doubt about it. One of the best days in my life was the day that Graham Vivian put his signature on a bit of paper.
Do you remember the day, Polly?
I do remember the day, and in fact it was a piece of toilet paper because there was no guarantee that it was going to get past the Geelong committee. So Bob just thought, well, perhaps we can flush it down the toilet if it doesn't work out.
Drew, you must have seen Polly because you lived in Perth for a long time and saw some great football there.
Yes, I saw Paul after he came back from his Geelong career. Because in Western Australia he was a champion here already, won a couple of Sandover medals, but he went over to the VFL as it was then and went from a champion to a legend in his 5 seasons over there. But he came back and transferred to West Perth, and you broke the Australian record, 356 games. I was there that day at Leederville Oval when you ran through the line of players prior to the game. It was a great moment.
It was a great moment, and like Bob, I mean, we all love our football, and it certainly won't change. And I suppose in us being recognised, it means that everyone else who's made some sort of an impact on football will be recognised. And we've got a game that worldwide is a fantastic game, but we're so good that we only play in Australia.
Bobby, you're the coach in '63. When Polly in that great grand final had some interesting characters, Doug Wade and Billy Goggin and John Devine and the Lord brothers, and your captain Freddie Wooler, apparently he used to get very nervous before matches.
He did, yes. Fred was one of the fellow. I think he used to vomit at half time. Actually, he was a terribly nervous fellow. Look at Paul and I together now. This is probably there. He is signing the bit of toilet paper.
Well, you're both so good looking in those days, Bobby, weren't you? I mean, Polly still looks terrific.
Well, look, for me to be connected with Polly, I mean, I am still of the opinion that the Victorians really didn't see the best of Farmer when he played just before he came to us. He used to be up in the area. I mean, he was a magnificent leap. He used to get rid of the ball before he even got down, Bruce. So there was no chance of anyone ever cutting off his handball.
Well, I think he was 27 when he came. Polly, where did you play your best football? Do you think it was in Perth before you came or over here?
Well, when I went to Victoria after my first disappointing year, being carried off the ground 3 times in 5 games and having to have my cartilage removed, I had to change my style of play. I was a bit of a leaper. But at that stage there was a fair amount of controversy by other coaches saying that I cheated in the ruck instead of giving me the credit of acquiring the skill over probably 10 or 12 years. And so I changed my style a little bit, and of course I did my knee over it, and then I just learned to become more of a thug than a clever player in Victoria. But the conditions forced that on me, and also the fact that with my loose knee I just could not afford to land on it, and I had to either land on my back or my other leg. And so I suppose from taking the screamers were concerned, I missed out on that a little bit, but I was still a handy player because my only intention was to get hold of the ball, and then we had the Billy Goggins who used to charge down the field and you give them the ball and they'd make a mess of the opposition.
You know, Bruce, when Polly first came to Geelong, Les a nice little handball. I think that goes to Closter, doesn't it? Yes, Wayne Closter. See, how many years ago, and I can still tell you every kick that he ever got. But I will say this, that he is... That fellow on the camera there, Graham Vivian Farmer, is the only fellow that I know has ever made an original contribution to Australian rules football. And for me, he is the greatest player that's ever played.
You think he changed the face, the style of the game?
He did. He changed it. Everybody came along. It's very interesting. There's a very short story about him, Bruce. You know that he wasn't expensive when he came to us. We didn't give you much, did we, Paul?
You didn't give me much.
And when you bring a high-priced fellow into a club that is just on the crest of a wave, you can sometimes disrupt it a little bit. And after the first practice match, I went to most of the team fellas that I knew and I said, how's he got on with Polly? He gave me 4 handballs. He gave me 6 handballs. Polly, the best thing that's ever... He brought himself into the club the first day, and there was never the slightest ripple or anything like that. In fact, I mean, I would say, and this is a hard thing for me to say, Bruce, Polly is probably adored more in Geelong than anybody else.
Even you, Bobby. and you've got another great player there.
Another great player, wearing Polly's number, of course. But I see that he wanted to wear number 11.
I saw that today too, but
yes.
Polly, they have the number 5 at the same time. Polly, as a young man, I grew up in Adelaide. The standard in South Australia was very high at the time. We're talking about the 60s. Was there much of a difference between Western Australian standard in club football and Victorian when you came across, in 1962?
Well, we were similar to South Australia. When we played South Australia in state games, they always beat us in South Australia, and we beat them most times in Western Australia. Most of the players who went from South Australia to Victoria and also from Western Australia to Victoria were also good footballers. So the difference in standard was only the hype and the fact that most people in Victoria just considered that if you didn't play football in Victoria, you couldn't play. So there was a slight negative about it, but that really didn't matter because Victoria was always considered the home of football, and from the time that I had an ambition to play league football, I always wanted to play in Victoria, and so in those days that was where you wanted to go if you wanted to be recognised.
Now, how many times did you sign up with different clubs?
Well, I signed up twice, Bob. I signed up with Richmond, and I received £200 for signing up.
Yes.
I was an apprentice motor mechanic, and I was doing national service, and I didn't have someone to advise me. And at the time, if you went from Western Australia to Victoria, they wouldn't give you a clearance. And I wanted to play football, so I stayed another 5 years, and then I signed up with Geelong. And I signed up with Geelong because I liked Geelong as a country town. It was either Geelong or St Kilda, but I liked Geelong as a country town, and I have no regrets about doing that, Bob.
Actually, Bob just about pinched you from under the nose of St Kilda, didn't he?
Well, he did, because they came down while St Kilda was trying to get me to play with them and took me down to Geelong. And more embarrassing was halfway to Geelong, Leo O'Brien dropped us off waiting for Bob Davis, who came down to pick us up, and Bob had a car that was 100 years old, and I had to push it to start it. You know?
Is that a true story?
Yeah, the car broke down, didn't it, Bob?
Broke down.
But I said I'll get you a new one if you come, so and I think you got
Bob
3
was good at
new ones.
making promises.
Well, I would just like to ask you, over the years you had some great ruck contests with John Nichols, when you used to fly for the ball and reach it at the apex. What do you think about rucking these days and what they're doing with it?
Well, people have got to take advantage of the way ruck is played. Madden possibly was the one who caused it to become a scramble, only because that was the way Madden rucked, and the umpires really, they failed in their duty to penalise people interfering in the ruck. You can manoeuvre in the ruck, but you just don't grab hold of people or push them out of the way. That's not ruck work, and other ruckmen should realise that if 2 people are fighting for the ball, someone can run and jump and go over the top of them, and the doubling up never ever took place. And so a lot of it is the fault of the coaches and the fault of the umpires and the fault of other players who couldn't combat people like Madden, whose only ability was his ability to get the ball in tight situations.
So the athlete should be encouraged.
Yeah, the athlete should be encouraged. You know, it's a run and a jump, and it's a run, jump, and you know how you take a scream where you jump into someone and they kick you up? Well, the same thing happens in the ruck. That's all I do.
And Polly, who do you like amongst the modern day ruckmen, the players that are playing right now?
The players who are playing right now, well, one of the players that I admire greatly has slipped a little bit, unfortunately, because of injury, is Wren. I like Clark from Brisbane, and the young ruckman from North Melbourne, looking all right, McKernan.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, there's the worrying thing that worries me about Australian rules football is the constant change. Now, we didn't make Australian rules football, but it's our responsibility to protect it. And it's really tragic when you think about it. In our quest to win games, they've allowed some great things out of Australian rules to slip by the wayside. And I'm talking about the drop kick, the stab kick and the torpedo punt. So when people talk about modern footballers now better than the players in the past, how can they say that if they can't do the things that were standard in the past? Now, the coaches are at fault, but they're not at fault because all they want to do is win the game. The people who are at fault are the people who are supposed to be protecting the game. game, and that is the administrators. And it really is tragic that it's in a game that is so different from any other in the world, and all that we ask of players is to have a little bit of ability, and the ability is to be adept at the fundamentals of the game.
Polly,
and that's not what's happening.
Sorry to interrupt. I mean, Bobby's agreeing with a lot of that. We could talk forever. We can't, unfortunately. It's a big day for you today in Western Australia. Could you just tell us briefly what's happening?
Yes, there's a game between the West Coast Eagles and the Geelong for the Polly Farmer Shield. It was going to be the Polly Farmer Cup, but there's already a Polly Farmer Cup out, and so it's a Polly Farmer Shield. And all it is we have a foundation over here called the Polly Farmer Foundation. It's just to help young Aboriginals to help themselves succeed in sport and in academia. And we've been going for 12 months. It took us 12 months to get a tax exemption from the federal government, so we're not going too good. And this is more or less the first of our things, just to make people aware that if they want to help the people who owned Australia for a long time, who are behind the black ball in a lot of things, but not necessarily in sport.
Polly, well done. Drew, give it a great call today, son.
Yep.
I know you will.
We'll give it our best for the Polly Farmer Shield Foundation, the Foundation Shield. Go on, mate. Thanks for joining.
And Bobby, those 100 stories you've written down and those 100 questions, I just didn't have time.
No, that's all right. And really, it's just a delight to see Paul. I did see him and was talking to him after the ball, but when you see a fella like that on the screen, you're really seeing football history.
I could feel your voice breaking. It was a lovely moment, Bobby. Bobby Davis, a Hall of Famer, and Graham Vivian Farmer, Polly Farmer, the living legend. A break, back with more after this.